Oh yeah, you read that title correctly. Childhood depression. And I know what you're thinking. Is he really about to tell me that children can have depression? Yes, that's exactly what I'm telling you. Now, in our last mental realness video on depression, we made the very clear distinction between depression and sadness, while also reviewing the traits, symptoms, and prevalence of major depression. Now, what I want you to do right now is click the card above for a direct link to the video I just mentioned, or click the link to the video in the description down below to get all caught up. Don't forget to leave a like when you watch that video, run me my like, and subscribe while you're at it. All right, so let's dive right in. What is childhood depression? Childhood depression has many similarities to major depression in adults, but there are some differences. Let's start with what we already know and talk about some similarities in the symptoms. So, for starters, feelings of sadness, unhappiness, and hopelessness and helplessness. Loss of interest or pleasure in activities usually deemed as fun. Insomnia. So when we talk about insomnia, we're talking about having difficulty falling and staying asleep. And when we talk about hypersomnia, we also talk about excessive sleepiness despite having adequate sleep. So excessive sleepiness despite getting the recommended amount of sleep per night or day. We also have appetite and weight changes unrelated to dieting, remember, difficulties thinking, concentrating, and making decisions, as well as feelings of fatigue and decreased energy. So constantly feeling as if you're running on a low battery that's constantly draining. And then we also have social withdrawal and isolation. Yes, this is also a symptom in adults with depression. We also have low self-esteem, excessive guilt, and feelings of inadequacy, in addition to frequent thoughts of death and/or suicidal ideation. Yes, unfortunately, this symptom does exist even in our very young children. All right, YouTube family, right here is where we start seeing some of the differences between childhood depression and depression in adulthood. Extreme sensitivity to failure or rejection. Is the child overly harsh and critical of themselves? Do they have difficulty bouncing back from their failure or rejection? These are very important questions to consider with children who have depression. Another symptom is frequent physical complaints. So we're talking about headaches and stomach aches, etc. So does the child experience headaches or stomach aches that do not seem to improve despite treatment? Now, this is often because they may not have the emotional attunement or ability to appropriately identify and express their emotions and what they're feeling or thinking. Another symptom, irritability, hostility, and/or aggression. So let's take a second and try to define each one of these, starting with irritability. Irritability can be defined as having a relatively low threshold to experience anger in response to frustration. In layman terms, this is a child who is prone to getting angry or annoyed easily. And look, let's not get this messed up. Adults can be very irritable as well. And then we have hostility, which is an unfriendly or negative attitude towards others, or showing or feeling dislike. And then we have aggression. I'm sure we've heard of this quite a bit, but this can be verbal or physical. So let's say a verbal or physical behavior that is intended to harm another individual that can result in emotional or physical harm. And another symptom that is typical in children is running away from home or talking about running away from home. All right, so we have a quick disclaimer. This list of symptoms is not in any way, shape, or form meant to be used for self-diagnosis or to diagnose your child or children. This video is intended for educational purposes. However, I strongly encourage anyone to visit their primary care physician or a mental health professional if you believe you or someone you know has depression. But sit tight because we're not quite done yet. We still have some statistics to discuss about childhood depression. Now, according to the Centers for Disease Control, or CDC, approximately 2.7 million or 4.4% of children between the ages of 3 and 17 were diagnosed with depression between 2016 and 2019. Yes, while not very common, there are cases of children as young as 3 to 5 years of age having depression. And according to the Journal of the American Medical Association, there were significant increases in depression, approximately a 24% increase between 2016 and 2020. Now, granted, this trend was present before the pandemic, but let's talk about more recent data from Mental Health America. According to Mental Health America, approximately 15% of youth ages 12 to 17, so we're talking about preteens and adolescents, reported suffering from at least one MDE or major depressive episode in the last year. This is a 1.24% increase from the previous year. And an estimated 2.5 million youth, or 10.5%, cope with severe major depressive disorder, which is an increase of 197,000 youth from the previous year. Now, much of the research on depression in boys versus girls found similar rates prior to puberty, but some findings suggest that boys 10 and younger may be more likely than girls to experience depression. However, during adolescence, the gap widens, with young women becoming almost twice as likely to have depression than young men. In fact, women will continue to have a higher likelihood of having depression well into their adult years. Now, some research suggests this may have a lot to do with earlier puberty in females compared to males. Basically, early maturation in girls has social, psychological, behavioral, and interpersonal risks that have a strong correlation to depression in adolescence and into adulthood. Now, there's some thought that early estrogen exposure may increase the risk for depression, but there are other factors to consider. And even if a girl goes through earlier puberty, it does not mean that she will struggle with depression as an adult. Once again, correlation does not imply causation. YouTube family, I really hope this video was helpful. You know, it's one thing to Google this information or read articles about it or to watch a few YouTube videos on it, but that actually pales in comparison to actually evaluating and working with children, adolescents, and young adults who have depression. It requires a great deal of responsibility, especially when the decisions you make or the decisions you don't make can be a matter of life or death. And the truth is, you don't need to be a school psychologist or a child psychologist or therapist or any mental health professional to be a mental health advocate and educate yourself on mental health and mental illness. After all, that's one of the reasons why my channel is here. Now, if you like today's video, make sure you let YouTube know by leaving a like. It helps my videos show up in more search results so others who are not subscribed can watch this video. Also, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with all of the upcoming content on this channel. And while you're at it, don't forget to share this video with others. Now, for the next mental realness video, we'll go a bit more in depth about the differences between depression and sadness, as well as the differences between depression and grief. So until next time, make sure you take care of yourselves and take care of one another. Peace.